She sang every night in a dusty saloon, smiling for men who never saw her tears. For 5 years she lived in a cage nobody could see. Her dress was not hers, her room was not hers. Even the air she breathed belonged to the man who claimed he owned her. But here's the thing about caged birds. Sometimes they forget they have wings. One night, a stranger walked into that saloon. He was broken too. He had buried his wife and child 3 years ago, and he thought his heart would never beat again. But when he heard her sing, something inside him woke up. What happens when two shattered people find each other in the darkness? What happens when a woman who was bought and sold decides she is done being property? And what happens when the man who owned her refuses to let her go? Stay with me until the end, because this woman will rise from the ashes. And when she does, you will want to stand up and cheer. This story is for every woman who has ever felt invisible, for every woman who has ever been told she was not enough, for every woman who has ever wondered if anyone would fight for her. The lesson is simple. Your past does not define your future. Your scars do not make you broken. They make you stronger. And sometimes, the person who saves you is yourself. If this message speaks to your heart, drop a comment and tell me your story. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss another story that matters, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Now, let the story begin. The trouble began on an evening when the wind carried more than dust through the broken streets of Redemption, Nevada. It carried a warning. Something was about to shatter, and it would start inside the Silver Queen Saloon. Lena stepped onto the small wooden stage, and the soft lantern light caught the tired shape of her face. She looked like a woman made of smoke and sadness. Her dress was faded red velvet, patched in 3 places where the fabric had worn thin. Her shoes pinched her feet because they were a size too small. But none of that mattered once she opened her mouth to sing. Her voice was not sweet. It was rough, cracked, aching, like a wound that refused to heal. Every man in that room stopped talking and listened because her pain matched their own. Cowboys who had lost their land, miners who had lost their fortunes, drifters who had lost their way. They all heard something familiar in her song, but none of them really saw her. Upstairs, the tiny attic room where Lena slept was nothing more than a cage. 4 walls, 1 window too small to crawl through. A bed with a mattress so thin she could feel the wooden slats beneath her back. Roy Manson owned the Silver Queen Saloon, and he owned her too. He reminded her of that fact every single day. 5 years ago, he had found her starving in Cheyenne. She had been 17 years old, alone, frightened, running from a marriage her father had sold her into. Manson had offered her food, shelter, safety. She had been too desperate to see the trap. Now everything she touched belonged to him. Her dress, her room, the food she ate, even the tips the cowboys threw on the stage went straight into his pocket. He called it repayment for saving her life. She called it slavery with a smile. Tonight, Lena sang with her eyes fixed on a spot above the men's heads. It was the only way to survive their hungry stares. When her final note faded into the smoky air, she slipped backstage and climbed the narrow stairs toward her room. In front of her cracked mirror, she washed the rouge from her cheeks and stared at the pale bruises around her collarbone. Manson had grabbed her there last night when she tried to keep her tips. His fingers had left marks shaped like a necklace of shadows. There was once a girl who wore silk gloves and played piano in bright parlors filled with roses. A girl whose mother had taught her French and whose father had called her his little princess. That girl was gone. Downstairs, the saloon door swung open, and a stranger walked in. Bo Ransom moved like a man the world had hurt too many times. He was tall, broad-shouldered, sun-browned from years of working under open skies. His boots were dusty. His hat was worn. His eyes looked like they had witnessed one loss too many. He had come to Redemption to sell the last of his brother's cattle. His brother had died 6 months ago from a fever that swept through their ranch. Before that, Bo had lost his wife and unborn child during a harsh winter 3 years past. The grief had hollowed him out like a rotted tree. Now he wanted only one thing, a bottle of whiskey strong enough to knock him into dreamless sleep. He planned to finish his business and leave town by sunrise. No conversations, no connections, no reasons to feel anything at all. But then Lena stepped back onto the stage for her second set. Her voice wrapped around him like a rope and pulled at something deep inside his chest, something he had buried with his wife, something he thought was dead and gone forever. Bo tried to ignore it. He drank. He kept to himself. He stared at the bottom of his glass like it held the answers to questions he was afraid to ask. Then a drunk cowboy grabbed the wrist of a young barmaid named Millie. The girl cried out. She was barely 16, with freckles across her nose and fear in her eyes. The cowboy laughed and pulled her closer, his breath sour with cheap whiskey. Lena stopped singing. The whole saloon went quiet. "Let her go," Lena said. Her voice was calm, but Bo could see her hands trembling at her sides. The cowboy sneered. "Or what, songbird? You gonna peck my eyes out?" Lena did not move. She did not blink. She stared at him with eyes that had seen worse men than him do worse things than this. "I said let her go." The moment stretched like a wire about to snap. Bo found himself gripping the edge of the bar, ready to move if things turned violent. Finally, the cowboy released Millie with a shove. The girl stumbled away, sobbing. The cowboy spat on the floor and stormed out of the saloon, cursing under his breath. Lena finished her song like nothing had happened. But Bo had seen everything. He had seen the fear hidden behind her steady gaze. He had seen her courage wrapped in a dress that did not belong to her. He had seen a woman who protected others even when no one protected her. When she left the stage, he followed her outside. The night air was thick with dust and the smell of coming rain. Thunder rumbled in the distance like a warning from the heavens. Bo stood on the wooden sidewalk, breathing deep, trying to clear his head. That was when he heard it. Manson's voice, low and cruel, coming from behind the saloon. Then a sharp crack echoed through the alley, the unmistakable sound of a slap. Bo did not think. He rounded the corner and found Manson holding Lena against the wall. Her cheek was already blooming with a dark bruise. Her eyes were full of fire and pain. "You think you can embarrass me in my own saloon?" Manson hissed. "You think you can make me look weak in front of my customers?" Lena did not answer. She had learned long ago that answering only made it worse. "Get your hands off her," Bo said. Manson turned, his face twisted with surprise, then anger. "Who the hell are you?" "Does not matter who I am. Let her go." Manson laughed, a cold, ugly sound. "You got no idea what you are stepping into, stranger. This woman belongs to me. I own her contract. I own her debt. I own every breath she takes." "A man cannot own another person," Bo said quietly. "Not in this country. Not anymore." Manson snapped his fingers. A massive figure stepped out of the shadows. Cole was his name, Manson's enforcer. The man was built like a mountain, with fists the size of hams and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. "Teach this fool a lesson," Manson said. Cole charged. The fight was brutal and fast. Cole's first punch caught Bo in the ribs and knocked the wind out of him. Bo dodged the second swing and slammed his fist into Cole's jaw. Pain exploded through his knuckles. They crashed into barrels stacked against the wall. Wood splintered. Whiskey spilled across the dirt. Cole grabbed Bo by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Bo kicked. His boot connected with Cole's knee. The big man grunted and dropped him. Bo scrambled to his feet, his vision blurred. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye. Cole swung again. Bo ducked and drove his elbow into Cole's stomach. The giant doubled over. Bo brought both fists down on the back of Cole's neck. Cole collapsed face first into the mud. Silence. Bo stood there, swaying, barely able to breathe. His whole body screamed with pain, but he was still standing. Manson stared at him with pure hatred. "This is not over," he said. "You just made the worst mistake of your miserable life." He grabbed Lena's arm and dragged her back inside the saloon. Bo wanted to follow. He wanted to finish what he started. But his legs gave out, and he fell to his knees in the alley. That was when he heard footsteps approaching. Lena had come back. She knelt beside him in the dirt, her own cheek still swollen, her eyes scanning every bruise on his face. She did not ask why he had fought for her. She did not ask his name. She only asked one question. "Are you broken?" Bo looked up at her. Rain had started to fall, mixing with the blood on his face. "Not yet," he whispered. She helped him to his feet and led him through a side door into a small storage room lit by a single lantern. There, among crates of whiskey and dusty shelves, she cleaned his split knuckles with alcohol and wrapped them with strips torn from her own petticoat. Her hands trembled at first. Then they grew steady. Bo watched her work. In the soft golden light, he did not see a saloon singer. He did not see a woman owned by another man. He saw courage. He saw gentleness. He saw someone who had survived horrors he could not imagine. Their hands touched. His was rough and scarred from years of ranch work. Hers was pale and slender and stronger than it looked. A jolt passed between them. Something electric. Something terrifying. "You are not like them," Lena whispered, not meeting his eyes. Bo pulled his hand away. "Do not see something in me that is not there," he warned. "I am just a man passing through." But outside, thunder cracked across the sky like an answer from God himself. Neither of them spoke it aloud, but they both felt it. Something had changed tonight. And there was no going back. Morning light crept over redemption like a thief, slow and cautious, afraid of what it might reveal. The storm had passed, leaving the streets muddy and the air thick with the smell of wet earth. Bo woke in the storage room where Lena had left him, his body stiff with pain, his mind clouded with memories he did not want to face. He had planned to leave at sunrise. That was the deal he had made with himself: sell the cattle, collect the money, disappear before this town could sink its claws into him. But when he stepped out into the quiet street, Lena was already there. She stood barefoot outside the saloon, her skirt soaked with morning dew, her face marked with fresh bruises that had not been there the night before. She looked like someone who had run out of places to hide. Bo should have kept walking. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to get on his horse and ride away. This woman was trouble. This town was poison. Getting involved would only lead to more pain. But he did not keep walking. "There is coffee at the hotel," he said, his voice rough from sleep. "It is hot." Lena did not speak. She only nodded. They walked together through the empty street, two strangers bound by a night neither of them could explain. At the hotel, they stood side by side at the small counter, drinking bitter coffee from chipped cups. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who understood that words could not capture what they were feeling. After a while, Bo jerked his head toward the edge of town. "Want to walk?" Lena hesitated. She glanced back at the saloon, fear flickering in her eyes. If Manson found out she was spending time with the stranger who had humiliated his enforcer, there would be hell to pay. But something in Bo's steady gaze made her brave. "Yes," she said. "I would like that." They walked past the last buildings of Redemption, past the blacksmith shop and the livery stable, until they reached a dry creek bed lined with cottonwood trees. The morning sun filtered through the leaves, painting patterns of light and shadow on the sandy ground. Lena sat down on a flat rock and pulled her bare feet up beneath her dress. For a long moment, she stared at the empty creek bed like it held secrets only she could read. Then she started talking. "My name is Helena Marie Cartwright," she said quietly. "I was born in Boston. My father was a banker. My mother was a musician. I grew up in a house with 12 rooms and a garden full of roses." Bo leaned against a cottonwood trunk and listened without interrupting. "When I was 15, my father made a bad investment. He lost everything: our house, our savings, his reputation. He could not bear the shame." Her voice cracked, but she kept going. "He sold me to a man named Gerald Foster, a textile merchant from Philadelphia. 42 years old, 3 times my age. My father called it a marriage. I called it a transaction." Bo's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists at his sides. I ran away on my wedding night, Lena continued, before he could touch me. I took nothing but the clothes on my back. I walked until my shoes fell apart. I begged for food. I slept in barns and under bridges. She looked up at him, and her eyes were dry despite the horror of what she was describing. By the time I reached Cheyenne, I was half dead from starvation. That was when Roy Manson found me. He gave me soup and bread and a warm place to sleep. I thought he was saving me. Her laugh was bitter. He was just buying me at a discount. Bo wanted to say something. He wanted to tell her that none of this was her fault. He wanted to promise her that Manson would pay for every bruise, every tear, every stolen year. But he knew that promises from strangers meant nothing to a woman who had been betrayed by everyone she ever trusted. So he just listened. When Lena finished her story, the sun had climbed higher in the sky. Birds sang in the cottonwood branches. The world went on as if nothing had changed. But something had changed. For the first time in 5 years, Lena had told someone the truth about her past. For the first time, she had shared her burden with another human being. And Bo had listened. Not because he wanted something from her. Not because he expected anything in return. He had listened because her story mattered. Because she mattered. They walked back to town in comfortable silence. But redemption had eyes. And tongues. 2 cowboys lounging outside the land office spotted them approaching. One of them spat tobacco juice near Lena's bare feet and sneered. "Well, look what we got here," he drawled. "Manson's little songbird walking around like she is somebody's wife now." Lena flinched, her shoulders tensed, her face went pale. Bo stopped walking. "You got something you want to say to me?" he asked quietly. The cowboys looked at him, really looked at him. They saw the bruises on his face from last night's fight. They saw the bandages on his knuckles. They saw the cold emptiness in his eyes that said he had nothing left to lose. The sneers disappeared. "No trouble, mister," the first cowboy muttered. "Just making conversation." They hurried away. Bo turned to Lena, but she was already walking toward the saloon. Her back was rigid, her hands were clenched. "Just go," she whispered without looking at him. "Get on your horse and leave before this place eats you too." She disappeared through the saloon doors. Bo stood alone in the street, torn between sense and something he could not name. Finally, he walked to the livery stable. His horse, a sturdy gray gelding named Duke, whickered when he approached. Bo checked the saddle, the bridle, the saddlebags. Everything was in order. He could leave right now. He could put this cursed town behind him and never look back. Then he noticed the problem. Duke had thrown a shoe. Bo cursed under his breath. He found the blacksmith and arranged for a replacement, but the man said it would take until tomorrow. The forge was backed up with orders. Fine, Bo thought. One more night, then I'm gone. He went to check the wagon he had used to transport his brother's cattle. Maybe he could sell it here and use the money to buy passage on a stagecoach. But the wagon was destroyed. Someone had taken an axe to the wooden wheels. The cuts were fresh, clean, deliberate. Bo knew immediately who was responsible. Manson was not trying to kill him. Not yet. Manson wanted him trapped. Manson wanted him to suffer. Manson wanted to punish him slowly for daring to touch what he considered his property. Anger burned in Bo's chest, but he forced it down. Losing his temper would only make things worse. He spent the rest of the day trying to find another way out of town. But every option was blocked. The stagecoach had left yesterday. The next one would not arrive for a week. No one was willing to lend him a horse. No one wanted to anger Roy Manson. By evening, Bo's frustration had reached a boiling point. He walked into the Silver Queen saloon. Not for company, not for trouble. He just needed the numbness that only whiskey could provide. Lena was on stage again, but she was different tonight. She sang the loud, bawdy songs the drunks demanded. She smiled a wide, empty smile. She swayed her hips and tossed her hair and played the part of the carefree saloon girl. But her eyes were glass. Bo watched her from the corner of the bar, his gut twisting with emotions he did not want to feel. After her set, Lena drank. She drank too much, too fast. When Manson reached for her arm, she shoved him away hard enough to make him stumble. The whole saloon went quiet. Manson's face turned red with rage, but there were too many witnesses. He could not punish her here. "You will regret that," he hissed. "Later." Lena laughed, a wild, desperate sound. Then she staggered out into the street. Bo waited a few minutes, then he followed. He found her in the livery stable, standing alone in the darkness between the horse stalls. A half-empty bottle of whiskey dangled from her fingers. Her face was wet with tears. She probably did not even know she was crying. "Well, look at the hero," she slurred when she saw him. "Come to save me again?" Bo approached slowly, the way he would approach a frightened animal. "Lena, you should go back inside. You need to sleep this off." She laughed again. That terrible, broken laugh. "I am tired of inside," she said. "I am tired of sleeping. I am tired of everything." She stepped closer to him, close enough that he could smell the whiskey on her breath, close enough that he could see the pulse jumping in her throat. Her fingers reached up and touched his cheek, tracing the bruise that Cole had left there. "He did this to you," she whispered, "because of me." Before Bo could respond, she kissed him. It was not sweet. It was not gentle. It was desperate and hungry and full of pain. Her body pressed against his like she was trying to crawl inside his skin, just to feel something real. Bo's breath caught. His hands trembled. His mind screamed at him to pull away. But his heart, the part he had buried with his wife, began to beat again. Lena pulled back. She grabbed his hand and pressed it against her chest, just below her throat. He could feel her heartbeat hammering like a frightened bird. "No one has ever touched me there," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Not with tenderness, not with love, just rough hands taking what they wanted." The words shattered something inside Bo. He pulled away, not because he did not want her, but because he wanted her too much. Because the flood of emotion was drowning him. Because the ghost of his dead wife was screaming in his ears. Lena's face crumpled. "You are just like the rest of them," she choked out. Then she ran into the night. Bo stood alone in the stable, trembling so hard he could barely stand. "What the hell am I doing?" But the answer was already whispering in the darkness. He was falling in love. And that terrified him more than any fight ever could. The hours crawled by like wounded animals. Bo did not sleep. He sat in his small room at the boarding house, staring at the ceiling, replaying that kiss over and over in his mind. The taste of whiskey and desperation, the warmth of her body against his, the sound of her voice breaking when she said those words. "No one has ever touched me there. Not with tenderness, not with love." He had pushed her away. He had let her think he was rejecting her. But the truth was so much more complicated than that. 3 years ago, Bo had held his wife, Sarah, in his arms as she bled to death. Their baby, a little girl they were going to name Hope, had died with her. The fever that swept through the ranch had taken everything. His wife, his child, his reason for living. After that, Bo had closed off his heart. He had become a ghost walking through a world that no longer made sense. He had convinced himself that he was incapable of feeling anything ever again. Then Lena had kissed him, and all those carefully constructed walls had come crashing down. He was not ready. He might never be ready. But that did not change the fact that he felt something for this woman. Something terrifying. Something real. Around midnight, Bo gave up on sleep. He walked downstairs and stepped outside into the cool night air. That was when he heard the scream. It came from the saloon, high and desperate and full of terror. "Lena." Bo ran. He burst through the back door of the Silver Queen and took the stairs 3 at a time. He could hear shouting, crashing. Then another scream, cut short. He reached the top floor just in time to see Cole dragging Lena down the hallway by her arm. She was fighting him, kicking, scratching, biting. But she was so small against his massive frame. Her struggles were like a butterfly beating its wings against a hurricane. "Let her go," Bo commanded. Cole turned, his face split into an ugly grin. The boss said I could have some fun with her first, he said. You know, before he sells her to that mining camp up north. Those boys are real lonely. They will pay good money for a pretty songbird. Lena's eyes found Bo. They were wild with fear and something else, something like hope. Bo picked up a broken piece of railing from where it had splintered against the wall. I said, "Let her go!" Cole shoved Lena aside. She crashed into the wall and slid to the floor, gasping. The big man cracked his knuckles. Round 2, hero. Cole charged like a bull. Bo sidestepped at the last second and brought the wooden beam down on Cole's back. The impact sent shockwaves up his arms. Cole stumbled but did not fall. He spun around and threw a punch that would have taken Bo's head off if it had connected. Bo ducked and slammed the beam into Cole's knee, the same knee he had kicked the night before. This time, he heard bone crack. Cole howled and collapsed. His hands clutched his shattered kneecap. Blood seeped between his fingers. Bo stood over him, chest heaving, every muscle in his body screaming. "Tell your boss I am done playing games," he said. "If he comes near her again, I will kill him." He dropped the beam and turned to Lena. She was curled against the wall, her dress torn, her hair tangled, her eyes huge and dark in her pale face. But she was alive. She was whole. Bo knelt beside her and held out his hand. "Can you walk?" She nodded. He helped her to her feet. She leaned against him, trembling like a leaf in a storm. "We need to go," he said, "now, before Manson comes back." "Where?" she whispered. "Away. Anywhere but here." He grabbed her small leather satchel from the floor of her room. It was pathetically light. Everything she owned in the world fit in one small bag. They slipped down the back stairs and out into the night. Duke was waiting in the livery, freshly shod and ready to run. Bo lifted Lena onto the saddle and swung up behind her. Her body was warm against his chest. He could feel her heart pounding through the thin fabric of her dress. "Hold on," he said. She grabbed the saddle horn with both hands. Bo kicked Duke into a gallop, and they rode out of redemption like the devil himself was chasing them. They did not stop until dawn. By then, they had climbed into the high country, following trails that Bo remembered from his youth. His brother had taught him these mountains. They had hunted elk here, fished for trout in the cold streams, built campfires under skies full of stars. Those memories felt like they belonged to a different man, a man who still believed in happiness, a man who had not lost everything. The hidden meadow appeared just as the sun broke over the eastern peaks. It was a small valley sheltered on 3 sides by steep ridges, accessible only through a narrow pass that was invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. In the center of the meadow stood an old cabin, weathered gray by decades of mountain winters. Bo reined Duke to a stop. "This was my brother's place," he said quietly. "He built it himself. He used to come here when he needed to escape the world." Lena stared at the cabin with wide eyes. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "It is falling apart," Bo admitted. "But it has walls, a roof, a fireplace. It will keep us safe until I can figure out what to do next." They dismounted. Bo led Duke to a small stream that trickled through the meadow. The horse drank deeply while Bo scanned the horizon for any sign of pursuit. Nothing. Only the endless blue sky and the distant cry of a hawk. Lena stood in the doorway of the cabin, her satchel clutched to her chest. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Bo turned to face her. "Doing what? Helping me? Risking your life for me? You do not even know me." He walked toward her slowly. "I know enough," he said. "I know that you deserved better than what life gave you. I know that no one should be bought and sold like property. I know that you are stronger than you think." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "I am not strong," she said. "I am terrified." Bo reached out and gently touched her cheek. The bruise from Manson's slap was fading, but the memory of it still lingered in her eyes. "Being scared does not mean you are not strong," he said. "It means you are human." A single tear slipped down her face. Bo wiped it away with his thumb. "Come on," he said. "Let us see if we can make this place livable." They worked side by side for the rest of the day. Bo patched the holes in the roof with scraps of wood he found in an old shed behind the cabin. Lena swept the dust from the floor and scrubbed the soot from the fireplace. By evening, the cabin no longer looked like a ruin. It looked like a home. Bo built a fire while Lena heated a pot of beans and dried beef. It was a simple meal, but it tasted better than anything either of them had eaten in years. After dinner, they sat by the fire in comfortable silence. "Thank you," Lena said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For seeing me as a person instead of a possession." Bo stared into the flames. "I almost walked away," he admitted. "That first night, when you told me to leave, I almost got on my horse and rode out of your life forever. Why did you stay? Because I saw something in you that I thought I had lost in myself. What was that?" "Hope." Lena reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were small and warm, and they fit perfectly between his. Neither of them spoke another word that night. They did not need to. Outside, the stars wheeled across the sky in their ancient dance. The wind whispered through the pine trees. The world kept turning. And for the first time in a very long time, Bo and Lena did not feel alone. But far below, in the Valley of Redemption, Roy Manson was planning his revenge. He would find them. He would make them pay. And when he did, the fire of his hatred would burn brighter than any flame they had ever known. Days passed in the hidden meadow, each one bleeding into the next like watercolors on wet paper. Bo threw himself into the work of rebuilding the cabin. He woke before dawn and did not stop until his hands bled and his muscles screamed for rest. He replaced rotted boards. He reinforced the chimney. He built new bed frames from pine logs he cut himself. The work was hard, but it was also healing. Every swing of the hammer, every pull of the saw, every bead of sweat that dripped down his face helped him forget the ghosts that haunted him. Lena watched him for the first 2 days, unsure of how to help. She had never built anything in her life. She had been raised to play piano and embroider handkerchiefs, not to swing axes or haul timber. But on the 3rd morning, something changed. Bo was struggling to lift a heavy beam into place. The wood was too long and too awkward for one person to manage. He nearly dropped it twice. Lena stepped forward and grabbed the other end. "Let me," she said. Bo hesitated. The beam was heavy. She could get hurt. But then he saw the determination in her eyes, the fierce pride that said she was done being helpless, done being useless, done being the kind of woman who needed saving. He nodded. They lifted together. The beam slid into place with a satisfying thunk. After that, Lena threw herself into the work alongside him. She fetched water from the stream and carried it back in buckets that left blisters on her palms. She gathered firewood until her arms ached. She learned to cook over an open flame, turning simple ingredients into meals that warmed them both from the inside out. The cabin transformed around them. What had once been a crumbling ruin became a cozy home. The roof no longer leaked. The fireplace drew smoke properly. The windows let in golden light without letting in the wind. And slowly, carefully, something else was being built between them. Trust. In the evenings, they sat by the fire and talked. Really talked. Lena told Bo stories from her childhood. Happy memories of her mother teaching her to play piano. Sad memories of her father's growing desperation as his debts mounted. Terrifying memories of the night she ran from her wedding bed. Bo listened to everything. He never interrupted. He never judged. He just sat there, solid and patient, letting her words fill the empty spaces in his heart. Eventually, she asked him about his past. "You know everything about me," she said. "But I know almost nothing about you." Bo stared into the fire for a long moment. "I was married once," he said finally. "Her name was Sarah. We met at a barn dance when I was 19. She was the prettiest girl I had ever seen. Blonde hair, blue eyes, a laugh that sounded like bells." Lena waited. "We built a life together. A ranch, a home. She got pregnant in the 3rd year of our marriage. A little girl. We were going to name her Hope. His voice cracked. There was a fever that winter. It swept through the valley like wildfire. Sarah got sick. The baby came too early. There was so much blood. He closed his eyes. They both died in my arms. Sarah first. Then our daughter. I buried them on a hill overlooking the ranch. Then I walked away and never went back. Lena's heart shattered for him. She reached out and took his hand, not with desire this time, just with understanding, just with compassion. "I am so sorry," she whispered. Bo opened his eyes. They were wet with tears he had held back for 3 years. "I thought I would never feel anything again," he said. "I thought my heart died with them. But then I heard you sing, and something woke up inside me, something I thought was gone forever." Lena squeezed his hand. Neither of them needed to say the words. They both knew what was growing between them. Love. Real love. The kind that did not demand or possess. The kind that simply existed, patient and strong, waiting to bloom. But their peace was not meant to last. On the 7th day, a stranger came to the meadow. He appeared at the edge of the tree line around midday, riding a mule and wearing the black coat of a traveling preacher. His face was thin and weathered, his eyes sharp and curious. Lena's first instinct was kindness. "Please," she called out, "come rest. We have food to spare." Bo's first instinct was suspicion. He positioned himself between Lena and the stranger, his hand resting on the knife at his belt. The preacher smiled. "God bless you, daughter," he said. "I have been traveling for 3 days with nothing but hardtack and creek water. A hot meal would be a blessing indeed." He dismounted and joined them at the cabin. Lena served him stew from the pot over the fire. The preacher ate gratefully, praising her cooking between bites. But Bo noticed that the preacher's eyes kept darting to Lena's face, studying her, memorizing her features. "Have we met before?" the preacher asked suddenly. Lena froze. "I do not think so," she said carefully. The preacher tilted his head. "Strange, you look so familiar, almost like—" He snapped his fingers. "The saloon in Redemption, the singer, you are that girl. The one Roy Manson was looking for." Bo stood up. "I think you should leave," he said quietly. The preacher's friendly smile turned cold. "That woman is a runaway," he said, "a thief. There is a reward for information about her whereabouts." "She is not a thief," Bo said, "and if you know what is good for you, you will forget you ever saw her." The preacher stood up and backed away toward his mule. "You have made a mistake, stranger," he said. "Roy Manson does not forgive. Roy Manson does not forget. And when he finds you, he will make you wish you had never been born." He mounted his mule and rode away without looking back. Bo and Lena stood in the silence he left behind. "He is going to tell them," Lena whispered. "Manson will know where we are." "Then we run," Bo said. "We pack up and we disappear into the mountains. We can be gone before nightfall." Lena shook her head. "How long can we keep running?" she asked. "How many mountains are there between here and the edge of the world?" Bo had no answer. Lena stepped closer to him. Her eyes were clear now, all the fear burned away by something harder, something fiercer. "I am done running," she said. "I am done hiding. If Manson wants to take me back, he will have to drag me kicking and screaming. And I will fight him every step of the way." Bo looked at her, really looked at her. This was not the broken songbird he had met in that smoky saloon. This was a woman reborn, a woman who had found her own strength, a woman who refused to be owned ever again. Pride swelled in his chest. "Then we stand together," he said, "whatever comes." Lena took his hand and held it tight. "Whatever comes," she echoed. But they both knew that the storm was coming, and it would be the worst storm either of them had ever faced. They came 2 days later. Bo saw the dust cloud rising from the valley below and knew immediately what it meant. He grabbed his rifle and told Lena to stay inside. "No," she said. "I am done hiding. I will face them with you." He wanted to argue. He wanted to lock her in the cabin where she would be safe. But he had learned by now that there was no point in trying to protect Lena from herself. They stood together at the edge of the meadow, watching the riders approach. Roy Manson led the group. He sat tall in his saddle, wearing a black vest and a silver bolo tie that glinted in the afternoon sun. His face was twisted with cold fury. Behind him rode Sheriff Dawson, a fat man with a drooping mustache and small, mean eyes. The sheriff owed Manson money, favors, secrets. He would do whatever Manson told him to do. 2 hired guns flanked them, hard men with hard faces and hands that never strayed far from their holsters. Bo counted the odds, 4 against 1, bad numbers. But he had faced worse odds before. "Well, well," Manson called out as he reined his horse to a stop. "The runaway and her hero. How romantic." Lena stepped forward. "What do you want, Roy?" Manson smiled. It did not reach his eyes. "What do I want? I want what belongs to me. I want 5 years of room and board repaid. I want the debt you owe settled in full." "I owe you nothing," Lena said. "You bought me when I was starving and desperate. You took advantage of a frightened girl. That is not a debt. That is slavery." The sheriff snorted. "Slavery is illegal, little lady. This is just business. You signed a contract." "I was 17 years old," Lena shot back. "I could not legally sign anything." Silence fell over the meadow. Bo watched the hired guns shift in their saddles. They were getting nervous. This was not going the way Manson had planned. "Let us settle this properly," Bo said. "Take us to town. Let the judge decide." Manson laughed. "The judge? You think the judge is going to side with a saloon whore over me? I own that judge. I own this whole damn town." "Then you have nothing to worry about," Bo said calmly. "If the law is on your side, let it prove you right." He could see Manson calculating. The hired guns were not comfortable with this situation. Killing a man and a woman in cold blood was different from intimidating shopkeepers and collecting debts. If word got out, there would be questions, investigations, consequences. "Fine," Manson snarled. "We will do this your way. For now. But when that judge finds her guilty, I am going to enjoy watching her hang." He turned to the sheriff. "Take them." The sheriff rode forward and pulled a pair of rusty handcuffs from his saddlebag. "Bo," Lena whispered. "It is okay," he said quietly. "Trust me." He held out his wrists. The ride back to Redemption took most of the day. Bo and Lena rode together on Duke, their hands bound, surrounded by Manson's men. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say, but their shoulders touched, their fingers intertwined. And in that small contact, they found the strength to keep going. The town was waiting when they arrived. News had traveled fast. The streets were lined with curious onlookers. Shopkeepers peered through their windows. Cowboys gathered in groups, whispering and pointing. Manson played to the crowd like an actor on a stage. "Here they are," he announced. "The thief and her accomplice. Justice will be served." Lena kept her head high. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her cower. The trial was held in the Silver Queen Saloon of all places. Judge Patterson, a thin man with spectacles and ink-stained fingers, sat behind a table that had been cleared of whiskey bottles and playing cards. The crowd packed the room so tightly that people were standing on chairs just to see. Manson spoke first. He painted himself as a saint, a generous businessman who had taken in a starving orphan and given her food, shelter, employment. And how had she repaid him? By running away in the middle of the night, by stealing money from his safe, by conspiring with a drifter to assault his employee and destroy his property. It was all lies, but the men who testified after him backed up every word. Cowboys who had been paid to lie, bartenders who feared what would happen if they told the truth. Even Cole, hobbling on a crutch, claimed that Bo had attacked him unprovoked. Lena sat in silence through it all. She had expected this. She had known that no one would believe her. Finally, Judge Patterson turned to her. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Lena looked at Bo. He nodded. She stood up. My name is Helena Marie Cartwright. The room went quiet. I was born in Boston. My father was a banker named Theodore Cartwright. When I was 15, he lost everything in a bad investment. To pay his debts, he sold me to a man named Gerald Foster. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I ran away before my wedding night. I ended up in Cheyenne with nothing. I was 17 years old. I was starving. I was terrified. And Roy Manson did not rescue me. He bought me. Lena's voice grew stronger. For 5 years, he took every penny I earned. He beat me when I looked at him wrong. He reminded me every single day that I was his property, his possession, his thing. She turned to face Manson directly. I never stole anything from you, Roy. I never took a single coin that did not belong to me. The only thing I ever took was my own freedom, and that was never yours to give. The room exploded. People shouted. Chairs scraped. Fists pounded on tables. Then a small voice cut through the chaos. She is telling the truth. Millie. The young barmaid stood up from where she had been hiding in the back of the room. Her face was pale with fear, but her voice was steady. I saw him hit her, Millie said. I saw the bruises. I heard her crying at night. Everything she said is true. Another woman stood up. Then another. Then another. He treated her like an animal. He kept her locked in that attic like a prisoner. He threatened to sell her to the mining camps if she did not behave. The tide was turning. Judge Patterson raised his hand for silence. I have heard enough, he said. There is no evidence of theft. There is no evidence of any crime except the crimes that have apparently been committed against this young woman. He looked at Lena. Case dismissed. You are free to go. The word free hit Lena like a physical blow. She had never been free. Not really. Not since she was 15 years old. She swayed on her feet. Bo caught her before she fell. The celebration lasted less than an hour. After the verdict, people crowded around Lena, offering congratulations, apologies, awkward handshakes. Women who had whispered about her behind her back now told her how brave she was. Men who had leered at her on stage now tipped their hats with newfound respect. But Lena barely heard any of it. She stood in the center of the saloon, surrounded by strangers, feeling more alone than she had ever felt in her life. Because freedom was terrifying. For 5 years, her life had been defined by captivity. She knew the rules of that prison. She knew what to expect. She knew how to survive. But now the walls were gone, the rules had changed, and she had no idea who she was supposed to be. Bo stood beside her through it all. He did not speak. He did not try to cheer her up. He just stayed close, a solid presence in a world that had suddenly become shapeless and strange. Finally, the crowd thinned out. The sun began to set. The saloon emptied. Lena turned to Bo. I need some air, she said. He nodded. They walked out of the saloon together, past the curious stares and whispered gossip, until they reached the livery stable at the edge of town. The horses were quiet in their stalls. The air smelled of hay and leather and dust. Lena leaned against a wooden post and stared at nothing. I do not know what to do, she whispered. Bo stood beside her. What do you mean? I mean, I have been dreaming about this moment for 5 years, dreaming about being free. But now that it is here, I do not know how to be free. I do not know who I am without the cage. Bo was silent for a moment, then he spoke. When Sarah died, I felt the same way. My whole life had been built around her, around us, around the family we were going to have. When she was gone, I did not know who I was anymore. Lena looked at him. What did you do? I ran. I worked. I drank. I tried to outrun the emptiness inside me. It did not work. Then, how did you survive? Bo met her eyes. I met you, he said simply. And I realized that maybe I was not supposed to outrun the pain. Maybe I was supposed to walk through it, one step at a time, with someone by my side. Lena's eyes filled with tears. "I am scared," she admitted. "I am so scared, Bo." He reached out and took her hand. "I know," he said, "but you are not alone. Not anymore." She stepped closer to him. "What if you leave?" she whispered. "What if you wake up one day and realize I am too broken? What if you decide I am not worth the trouble?" Bo cupped her face in his hands. "Listen to me," he said. "You are not broken. You are the strongest person I have ever met, and I am not going anywhere. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever." She searched his eyes for any sign of deception. She found none. He meant it, every word. She rose up on her toes and kissed him. This time it was different. This time there was no desperation, no whiskey, no fear, just two people who had found each other in the darkness and decided to face the light together. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "Come with me," Bo said. "Back to the cabin. We can build a life there, a real life, together." Lena nodded. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will come with you." They saddled Duke and rode out of Redemption as the stars began to appear. Neither of them looked back, but Manson was watching from the window of his saloon. His face was twisted with rage. His hands were clenched into fists. "This is not over," he muttered to himself, "not by a long shot." He turned to Cole, who was sitting in the corner with his leg propped up on a chair. "Gather the boys," Manson said. "We are going to pay our friends a visit." "When?" "Tonight, when they are asleep, when they think they are safe." Cole grinned. "What do you want me to do?" "Burn it," Manson said. "Burn it all, the cabin, the meadow, everything they have built. And if they do not make it out alive?" "Then that is God's will," Manson said. "Is it not?" Cole laughed. Outside, the night was peaceful. The stars were bright, the wind was gentle. But the storm was already gathering, and this time it would bring fire. The attack came in the dead of night. Bo woke to the smell of smoke. He was on his feet before his mind fully registered what was happening. The cabin was filling with a gray haze that made his eyes water and his lungs burn. "Lena!" he shouted. "Wake up!" She bolted upright, coughing. "What is happening?" "Fire! We have to get out, now!" He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the door. But when he touched the handle, it was hot enough to blister his palm. "Back window," he said. "Go." They ran to the small window at the rear of the cabin. Bo smashed through the glass with his elbow and lifted Lena through the opening. Then he squeezed out after her. Outside, the night was no longer dark. Flames licked up the walls of the cabin, painting the meadow in shades of orange and red. The roof was already beginning to collapse. Sparks shot into the sky like vengeful stars. Bo pulled Lena away from the blaze. "Who did this?" she gasped. But they both knew the answer. Manson. They stood at the edge of the meadow and watched their home burn to the ground. Everything they had built together, every memory they had created, every hope they had dared to dream. Gone. Lena sank to her knees. She did not cry. She was too shocked for tears. Bo knelt beside her and put his arm around her shoulders. "We are alive," he said quietly. "That is what matters. We can rebuild." But Lena was not looking at the cabin anymore. She was looking at the tree line, at the smoke rising from somewhere beyond the ridge. "Bo," she whispered, "look." He followed her gaze. Another fire, bigger than theirs, coming from the direction of the Henderson ranch. The Hendersons were a young couple who had settled in the valley last spring. They had 2 children, a boy of 7 and a girl of 4. "Oh, God," Lena breathed. She was on her feet before Bo could stop her. "Lena, wait." But she was already running. She crashed through the underbrush, branches scratching her arms and face, her bare feet pounding against the rocky ground. She did not feel the pain. She did not feel anything except the desperate need to reach that fire before it was too late. The Henderson cabin was fully engulfed when she arrived. Martha Henderson stood in the yard screaming her son's name. "Tommy. Tommy, where are you?" The little girl, Beth, was crying in her father's arms, but Tommy was nowhere to be seen. "Where is he?" Lena shouted. Martha turned to her with wild eyes. He ran back inside. He wanted to save his toy horse. I tried to stop him, but he was too fast. Lena looked at the burning cabin. The front door had collapsed. The windows were sheets of flame. No one could survive in there. No one except maybe a small boy hiding under his bed. She ran toward the house. "Wait!" Martha screamed. "You will die!" But Lena did not stop. She grabbed a blanket from a clothesline, soaked it in the water trough, and wrapped it around herself. Then she sprinted toward the side of the cabin where a small window had not yet been consumed by flames. She smashed through the glass and tumbled into hell. The heat was incredible. It pressed against her from all sides, squeezing the air from her lungs. The smoke was so thick she could not see her hand in front of her face. "Tommy!" she screamed. "Tommy, where are you?" No answer. She dropped to her knees and crawled across the floor. The wet blanket was already beginning to steam. She had seconds, maybe less. Her hand touched something soft, a small shoe. She followed it and found Tommy curled in a ball under his bed, clutching a wooden horse to his chest. He was unconscious but still breathing. Lena grabbed him and dragged him toward the window. The ceiling groaned above her. She threw the boy through the opening and dove after him. They hit the ground just as the roof caved in. A wall of heat and debris washed over them. Lena covered Tommy with her body, shielding him from the falling embers. Then Bo was there, pulling them both to safety. Martha rushed forward and gathered her son in her arms, sobbing with relief. Tommy coughed and opened his eyes. "Mama? I am here, baby. I am right here." Lena lay in the grass, gasping for air. Her lungs burned. Her skin was covered in ash and minor burns. But she was alive. And so was Tommy. Bo knelt beside her and held her like he would never let go. "You are insane," he said, his voice breaking. "You could have died." Lena managed a weak smile. "Could not let him die," she whispered. "He is just a little boy. You saved his life." "No," Lena said. "We saved each other." As the sun rose over the burned meadow, the people of the valley began to arrive. Word had spread of the fires. Word had spread of Lena's bravery. They came with food and blankets and tools. They came with lumber and nails and helping hands. They came to rebuild what Manson had destroyed. The new cabin was bigger than the old one. It had 2 bedrooms instead of 1, a proper kitchen, a porch with a rocking chair. It took a week to build. When it was done, the whole valley gathered to celebrate. There was music and dancing and more food than anyone could eat. And for the first time in her life, Lena was not the outsider looking in. She was part of a community, part of a family. She belonged. That night, after the guests had left, she and Bo sat on their new porch and watched the stars come out. "Thank you," Lena said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For helping me become who I was always supposed to be." Bo took her hand. "You did that yourself," he said. "I just held the ladder." She laughed. It was the first real laugh she had laughed in years. Bo laughed with her. And in that moment, despite everything they had lost, despite everything they had survived, they were happy, truly happy. But there was one more surprise waiting, one more miracle growing in secret. And it would change everything. 3 weeks had passed since the fire. The new cabin was complete. The meadow was green again, the scorched grass replaced by fresh growth. Spring had come to the mountains, bringing wildflowers and sunshine and the promise of better days ahead. But Lena had been keeping a secret. She had noticed the signs for a while now. The morning sickness that hit her like a wave every time she woke up, the exhaustion that dragged at her bones no matter how much she slept, the strange cravings for pickles and strawberry jam. She knew what it meant. But she was afraid to say it out loud. Afraid that speaking the words would make them real. Afraid that reality would find some way to steal this miracle from her. So she kept quiet. She went about her days. She helped Bo with the chores, cooked their meals, tended the small garden they had planted beside the cabin. And every night when he was asleep, she would press her hand against her belly and whisper prayers to a God she was not sure she believed in anymore. Please, she would say, please let this be real. One evening, Bo came home from checking on the horses and found Lena sitting on the porch. She was staring at the sunset with tears streaming down her face. Lena? He rushed to her side. What is wrong? Are you hurt? She shook her head. No, she said. No, I am not hurt. Then what is it? You are scaring me. Lena took a deep breath. This was it, the moment of truth. She took Bo's hand and placed it on her lower belly. His face went blank with confusion. Lena? The garden will need to be bigger, she whispered. For a long moment, he did not understand. Then understanding dawned. His eyes went wide. His mouth fell open. His hand trembled against her stomach. Are you saying what I think you are saying? Lena nodded. I am pregnant, Bo. We are going to have a baby. Bo did not speak. He could not speak. 3 years of grief came crashing down on him all at once. 3 years of believing he would never feel joy again. 3 years of running from a pain so deep he thought it would swallow him whole. And now this, new life, new hope. A second chance he never thought he would get. The tears came before he could stop them. They poured down his face, raw and messy and completely uncontrollable. He sobbed like a child, his whole body shaking with the force of emotions he had kept locked away for so long. Lena held him. She wrapped her arms around him and pulled him close, letting him cry against her shoulder. It is okay, she whispered. Let it out. Let it all out. He cried for Sarah. He cried for Hope, the daughter he never got to meet. He cried for all the lonely nights and empty days. He cried for the man he used to be and the man he was becoming. And when the tears finally stopped, he felt lighter than he had in years. Like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Like the chains that had bound his heart had finally broken free. He pulled back and looked at Lena. Her face was wet with tears, too. I was so scared to tell you, she admitted. I was scared you would be upset, scared you were not ready. Bo cupped her face in his hands. I am terrified, he said honestly. I am more scared than I have ever been in my life, but I am also happier than I ever thought I could be again. You gave me that. You and this baby. You brought me back to life. Lena smiled through her tears. We brought each other back, she said. He leaned forward and kissed her. It was a soft kiss, a tender kiss, a kiss full of promise and possibility. When they pulled apart, the sun had finished setting and the stars were beginning to appear. We need to tell the Hendersons, Lena said. Tomorrow, Bo agreed. Tonight is just for us. They sat together on the porch, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest. The baby was too small to feel yet, but Lena could sense it there. A tiny spark of life, growing stronger every day. She thought about everything she had survived to reach this moment. The father who sold her. The husband she escaped. The man who tried to own her. The fire that almost killed her. All of it had led her here. To this cabin. To this man. To this child growing inside her. She would not trade a single scar. Bo? Yes? Do you think we will be good parents? He was quiet for a moment. I think we will be the best kind of parents, he said finally. The kind who know what it means to fight for the people they love. Lena smiled and snuggled closer. I think so too, she whispered. Above them, a shooting star streaked across the sky. Make a wish, Bo said. Lena closed her eyes. I already have everything I need, she said. And for the first time in her life, she meant it. 6 months later, Manson got what was coming to him. It started with a letter. A federal marshal had been tracking Manson for years. Turns out the Silver Queen Saloon was just the tip of a very dirty iceberg. Manson had been running guns to outlaws, laundering money for criminals, and bribing officials across 3 states. The letter came from a lawyer in Denver. explaining that Lena's testimony was needed to help build the case. She almost said no. The thought of seeing Manson again, of reliving all those terrible years, made her sick to her stomach. But then she thought about all the other girls who might be trapped in cages like hers, all the other women who might be bought and sold by men like Roy Manson. If her story could help stop that, she had to try. Bo went with her to Denver. The trial lasted 3 days. Lena sat in the witness box and told her story one more time. She described how Manson had found her, how he had trapped her, how he had beaten her when she disobeyed, how he had threatened to sell her to mining camps if she did not behave. She spoke clearly and calmly, without tears. She had cried enough. Now it was time for the truth. Other witnesses followed her. Millie testified. Martha Henderson testified. Even some of Manson's former employees came forward, emboldened by seeing a woman brave enough to speak first. By the time the trial ended, Manson's empire had crumbled completely. The judge sentenced him to 20 years in federal prison. Lena was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. She watched Manson's face go white with shock. She watched the deputies drag him away in chains. She watched the man who had stolen 5 years of her life finally get what he deserved. And she felt nothing, no joy, no satisfaction, no sense of triumph, just relief. It was over. It was finally, truly over. That night, she and Bo celebrated at a small restaurant near their hotel. She ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, a steak the size of her head, just because she could. How do you feel? Bo asked. Lena considered the question. Free, she said finally. Really free. Not just legally free, but free inside. Free of him. Free of the fear. Free of everything he put in my head. Bo reached across the table and took her hand. You did it, he said. You faced him, and you won. We won, Lena corrected. I could not have done any of this without you. He smiled. I love you, he said. It was the first time he had said those words out loud. Lena's eyes filled with tears. I love you too, she whispered. They left Denver the next morning and rode back to the meadow. Spring had turned to summer. The wildflowers were in full bloom. The stream sparkled in the sunshine. And Lena's belly had grown round and full with the child they had made together. She was due any day now. As they crested the ridge and looked down at their cabin, Lena felt a wave of emotion wash over her. This was home, not just a place to sleep, but a real home, built with their own hands, filled with their own memories, waiting to welcome a new life. Bo, she said. Yes? I want to name her Hope. He went still. You think it is a girl? Lena smiled and placed her hand on her belly. I know it is, she said. Bo was quiet for a long moment. Hope, he repeated softly. I like that. It feels right, Lena said. After everything we have been through, after everything we have survived, she is our hope, our proof that good things can still happen, even after the worst days of your life. Bo reached over and covered her hand with his. Hope Ransom, he said. Our daughter. Lena leaned against him. The sun was warm on her face. The wind was gentle in her hair. The world was full of possibility. And for the first time in her life, she was not afraid of the future. She was excited for it. Hope came into the world on a summer morning, screaming loud enough to scare the birds from the trees. She had her father's dark hair and her mother's fierce eyes. She was small and perfect, and absolutely beautiful. Lena held her daughter for the first time and wept with joy. This tiny person had grown inside her, had been nourished by her blood, protected by her body, loved before she even drew her first breath. And now she was here, real, alive. Bo sat beside them on the bed, his face wet with tears. She is perfect, he whispered. She is ours, Lena said. He leaned forward and kissed his daughter's forehead. Welcome to the world, Hope, he said. We have been waiting for you. The baby stopped crying and opened her eyes. She looked up at her parents with an expression that seemed far too wise for a newborn. Then she yawned and fell asleep. Lena laughed. "She is already bored with us," she said. "She is pacing herself," Bo replied. "She knows we have a long road ahead." "A long road," Lena repeated. "But a good one, I think." "The best one," Bo agreed. He put his arm around her and pulled her close, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby. The three of them sat there in the morning light, a family born from pain and loss and hope. Outside, the world went on. The sun rose and set. The seasons changed. Life continued in all its messy, complicated glory. But inside that cabin, in that quiet moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was this: a woman who had been bought and sold like property, now holding the child she chose to create. A man who had buried his heart with his first family, now building a new one from the ashes of his grief. A baby named Hope, because that is exactly what she was. Their hope, their miracle, their proof that even the darkest nights eventually give way to dawn. Years later, when people asked Lena about her life, she would always start the same way. Once upon a time, she would say, "I was lost. I was broken. I was convinced that happiness was something that happened to other people. And then I found a man who looked at me and saw a person instead of a possession. And together, we built a life." It was not easy. There were hard times and setbacks and moments when we wanted to give up, but we did not give up. Because that is what love is, really. It is showing up every day, even when it is hard, even when you are scared, even when you do not know how the story ends. We showed up for each other, and that made all the difference. The end of Lena's story was simple. She lived, she loved. She raised a daughter who grew up knowing what it meant to be strong and kind and brave. She grew old with a man who never once made her feel like she was anything less than everything. And when she looked back on her life, she had no regrets. Because every scar had taught her something. Every loss had made her stronger. Every tear had watered the seeds of the garden that became her life. From ashes, she had risen. From pain, she had found joy. From a cage, she had found freedom. And that is the most beautiful redemption of all. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.